This session that is kicking off this morning is going to be dynamite. It is about healthcare, it's about transformations, it's about using technology, and better yet, it's brought to you by our next generation of leaders who are emerging and blossoming and brilliant. So it's wonderful. Now, Anikit and Arun and Hermione are going to introduce themselves and tell you more about the session. They also want it to be as interactive. So if you have a pressing, burning question, go to the microphone in the midst of their presentation, because that's when they want to accept it. So Anikit, you got it.
Thank you, Ernie. Hello, everyone. My name is Anikit Matatkar. I am here on behalf of Kirti Matatkar, the CEO of United Ag, as the moderator. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to come today due to a family emergency. So I will be playing the hat of both panelist and moderator today. So don't be surprised if I ask a question and then immediately answer it myself. So I'm representing United Ag, and I'm excited to be here talking about technology, transformation, and especially in the healthcare industry. As many of you know, there's so much potential of technology and growth in the healthcare industry, and being at a company like United Ag is a fantastic place to be. We like to believe ourselves as a think tank, guinea pigs helping vendors and different technologies try out and test out their different products. And I think that growth mindset that we have at United Ag, that has obviously trickled down from our leadership, has helped us grow immensely. In the last few years, we've actually grown from $80 million in contributions to $250,000, which is in part the way our employees think and the way we as a company want to do business. For those of you that don't know, United Ag is a health plan and TPA, and we serve the agriculture industry in California and Arizona, and potentially expanding to other states. Because we have such an important membership, our ultimate goal at the end of the day is always to serve our membership. How can we use technology as a way to better their lives, make their lives easier? And I think we have a great group of employees, and our staff is incredible at pushing that drive and making sure that our membership, the agriculture industry, is prepped and ready to do and for their healthcare needs and everything. Like I mentioned, this is a very exciting thing for me, is because technology growth needs a growth mindset. You talk to many people in different industries, in the healthcare industry as well. You can see a little bit of hesitation with technology. So it's always nice to work at a company that is trying to push that initiative. And so with that, I'll put on my panelist hat, and I will introduce United Ag and our technology initiatives. So a big thing that we're doing is Microsoft Fabric. For those of you that don't know, it's an analytics platform by Microsoft that actually allows us to do a lot of our in-house analytics, warehousing, eventually in the future, data science, machine learning, AI, and it kind of has that holistic, unified area where we can build and grow. A lot of these technology initiatives that we're talking about today, and you'll hear about, can't be done without data. And as a data engineer myself, my goal is to be able to serve the data so that we can grow from a technology standpoint. And being able to holistically unify our company, cross-departmental analytics, integration with other vendors and systems is extremely important. And one thing I'm actually really proud of that I've been building and working on is a plan comparison tool. I know a lot of TPAs will probably like this idea. My goal at United Ag was to bring transparency to the industry. A lot of us, especially as people that go to doctors, go to providers, can see that it can be tough from a pricing standpoint, from a transparency standpoint, how you're getting priced, why you have to pay the specific bills. So from a TPA standpoint, I built a tool that will allow us to essentially re-adjudicate claims on different plans and be able to compare and work with employer groups and work with different companies to understand why certain things are priced this way, why certain plans are priced this way, and having that full transparency and being able to have open conversations about cost, about retention and all that stuff is very big. So that's something if you want to talk more about, I'd love to talk about. And with that, obviously, Arun and Hermione are lovely panelists to talk about the AI side of things. But going into the AI world, working with AI assistants, AI agents, chatbots, LLMs, definitely something that is that growth is very fostered at United Ag. So in my role, it's very nice that I can try, test, experiment, iterate, and get to work with all these lovely vendors that we have today, and then the lovely vendors we have on the stage. And without further ado.
Thanks, Aniket. Great to be here. My name is Arun Santabanor, and I am the co-founder and CEO of VoiceGain. And what we build are AI voice agents that are trained to handle calls that TPAs in this room receive. These calls could be things around claims, it could be around eligibility, and these voice agents can work in the call center space. And we have a product branded for this space called VoiceGain KC. And it essentially does 4 things, right? The first thing it does is it fronts all the calls. So it can engage your callers, whether they're members calling in or providers calling in a natural sounding conversation. So think of it like talking to Alexa, right? You can talk to this AI voice agent just like that. It can understand the reason for the call, and that's really important because half the battle is understanding why you're calling in the first place. Once it understands the reason for the call, if it's a routine inquiry like a claim status or an eligibility verification, it goes ahead and answers it so that you don't have to have a human agent do that routine inquiry. Now, that's the step 1. Now, the step 2 is if the call requires live assistance, you want the AI to be able to get the call to the right place. So triage it effectively, authenticate the customer, authenticate their HIPAA information, and get it to the right place. Because we all have been, as end consumers, into places where we get bounced off, right? Like, oh, I have to transfer you to another place. So that's the other thing that AI does. So now let's keep following the train. So once it gets to a live agent, the AI listens to the call and guides. And instead of becoming consumer facing or member or provider facing, it actually becomes a agent assistant. So now, as the AI is listening to the conversation between the agent and the caller, it's providing suggestions. And at the end of the call, typically these agents spend 1 minute to 2 minutes to actually type up notes. Now, AI can automate that process within a couple of seconds of the end of the call. It generates notes. And then the 4th step, which is really important, is it looks at this entire conversation and evaluates it from a customer satisfaction, a sentiment, generates a score for the QA function in the call center team. So it's also aiding the leadership, the operations management in the call center. So it's like really an end-to-end AI. And where we see the big opportunities for people in this audience and for people in this room is that 3 in 5 calls that TPA receives are provider calls. And that's we'll talk a little bit more about our implementation with United Ag. And those can be really automated to free up capacity for your agents to serve members, right? So that's been the primary use case. We've been live taking production calls since October of 2024, and more than 250,000 calls have been handled by VoiceGain KC today, end to end. The other thing with this technology is you can listen to the entire conversation, get the transcript, see everything that it did so that you can audit it. And the benefits, just to summarize the benefits, is that you can now extend your service hours. A lot of TPAs, the call centers are during business hours. Now you can offer service after hours, right? During the weekend, because your members want to reach you when they have a problem, when they have a health issue, and that's not going to be during the business days, right? Cost savings, obviously. Personalized support, can you now tailor a voice agent to what the member really needs, what the provider is looking for, so that not everybody is presented the same old menu tree that you had. And then obviously improved quality assurance. If you can measure every call, obviously you're going to improve the quality. That's a little bit about VoiceGain, but broadly what excites me is healthcare is a complex, very complex business, right, with a lot of details. I think with voice, which is such a low barrier to adoption, it can really open up access to a lot of information that you all have in your plan documents And that's really the exciting part. We're just getting started on this journey, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you, Arun, for this presentation. Hi, everyone. I'm Hermione, like the Harry Potter character, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Clarity Care AI. Basically, what we do at Clarity Care AI is we automate clinical workflows for risk-bearing entities. So we've worked with health plans and TPAs. And we've also gone all the way to really focus on prior authorization specifically, because it's one of the main clinical workflows that's happening to control costs. And we've been doing that for the past 2 years. We basically spent 1 year developing a model. We're big believers in human in the loop. So what we did is we spent 1 year with physicians and clinicians in-house and design partners, making sure that we were able to identify cases that could be fully automated versus cases that actually needed human expertise. And I'm a strong believer that even with AI becoming better and OpenAI releases new model, I'm a strong believer that we're always going to need a human to process the hard cases, because you're going to need some context and clinical expertise for a specific subset of them. Now, just for prior authorization, to put it back in the context for everyone, so what that actually means in terms of what we do is we take medical records that providers submit to the TPA, to the vendor, to the health plan, and we compare it against those evidence-based guidelines, those policy bulletins that we structure and compare. It's essentially like a matching tool that is really good at sourcing the right pieces of evidence in a medical record. That today assists utilization management nurses in workflow and production across the board, from outpatient procedures, imaging, all the way to inpatient admissions, even pharmacy. And we've worked with entities that care about specific categories of them where they're struggling with volume, or they're struggling with turnaround time. There's a big push on turnaround time. And I would say that, why is it important to care about this today, especially in the self-insured world? There's kind of like a framework that we like to think about, but I think it's more important to tell you what you should care about it today. I'm sure you're all aware of, but everyone is looking at claims denials, prior authorization denials, how it's affecting providers, how it's affecting members. CMS is out there. Plans have pledged to actually go around and do something about prior authorization. So why you should care about it is that members and your providers care about it, and then what you can do for you actually internally is beyond the service excellence, which is key, by bringing transparency and auditable processes. It's also kind of helpful in-house, because then you have those highly qualified clinical staff that can focus on the high-cost cases, that can focus on the high-cost stop-loss claims, for example. We're working with an organization that told me, thank you for doing this, because now my nurses can focus on the high-cost stop-loss claims that are coming through and don't have to focus on the utilization management cases that are going automatically through, especially when 95% of them are approved in the first place. And then on the clinical accuracy aspect of things, that's one that's obviously very important. You need to provide services with at least the same level of accuracy, if not more. And you're able to actually empower clinicians who have the final review on a case to understand the entire process and do it in a robust, data-backed way. And all of that combined, we found that basically now clinicians that use this tool, instead of spending around 20, 25 minutes on the case, go down to 3 to 4 minutes, kind of consistently. So it frees up time to focus on other things in-house. Now, in terms of use cases and prior authorization as a whole, like prior authorization is an entire workflow where you have benefit verification, the SPDs, and then the actual clinical reviews. One would also go all the way to like site of service, like am I steering my member to the right place? That's all the entire workflow that we're going after, and the focus is on the clinical review, but being able to provide the entire workflow is what we're aiming at. And ultimately, like the final one is again, like I'm very strong believer in human in the loop, and so augmenting humans to actually focus on the tasks that matter. And it's not about fully replacing, it's about upskilling and focusing on what actually matters, which is ultimately members, and internally is high cost claims and what's going through, and making sure we're paying the right amount and making sure patients are going to the right places. Yeah, so that's a background.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introductions. I'm very excited to kind of talk about this. It's very cool to be on stage because all three of us are engineers, and I feel like sometimes you don't get that boots on the ground kind of conversation with people that are actively building and actively working in this space. So I'm extremely excited to talk about this. And like Ernie said, we want to make this as collaborative as possible. So I will be looking around. If you want to raise your hands, jump in front of mics and ask questions as we are talking, please feel free. And we will cater definitely to the questions that you have as we're having these conversations. But to kind of start off, I think a big important question, especially now in today's world as we're trying to grow, is why technology, why innovation? The healthcare industry has been around for decades. What today or in the last 5 years has caused this push in technology? So I kind of wanted to talk, Arun and Hermione both, starting off with Arun, why do you see technology as the future? Why are you investing in technology, and why is that crucial to an industry, especially like healthcare?
Yeah, thanks for asking it. I think we are in a very singular moment. AI, we read about it, we hear about it, we listen to it. It's transforming every industry, and a very information-intensive industry like healthcare, you're dealing with a lot of information, is kind of going to be swept up in this transformation. So we are in this, and I can just reflect even on our own journey over the last 12 to 18 months. People are moving on from just thinking about it to actually doing it, like you all have done, getting started with it, and so that's really cool to see. The why to me is, if an industry, whether it's a technology company, whether it's a TPA, whether it's a bank, if they don't adopt it, their competitor will, or their customer may even will, and disintermediate people all, that's kind of what we're seeing. So it's almost adapt or perish for every organization, not just a TPA. So I think the why of this is pretty important, but also there is a positive side way to look at this, right? If you can actually adopt and get there, I think you can service a lot of growth, profitable growth, by leveraging these advances. So that's kind of the upside, the carrot, if you would. Yeah, there is a stick to it, but there's also a carrot to it, right?
Hermione?
Hermione.
Yeah, I think like why we should care, like let's not kid ourselves. Like AI, ML has been around, like the first kind of big models came out like in the early 2010s. Like predictive analytics has always been around. Why people care about it today is because the new wave of those large language models can actually automate more complex tasks and very custom workflows. And that's why there's such a transformation right now, because you can do things that we couldn't do before. It's a kind of a big difference between like, okay, I can predict who my high cost member is going to be, but now I can actually like take a bunch of steps that are in my playbook and automate it. So it's kind of like, I think the big why now. Now, obviously, that comes with a lot of challenges, hallucinations. Is it doing actually what I want to do? But it's able to do that now, which it wasn't able to do so. That's why everyone hears about agentic agents. It's just like workflow automation that's a bit smarter, basically. But that's a bit smarter that actually matters, because you don't have to define the entire problem. You can kind of like, okay, here's a playbook, execute this task, and I think that's why we should care about it now and today. And the other important aspect is that models keep getting better. When ChatGPT came out in like November 2023, I think it's the fastest adoption ever of a product. Everyone, like the question that you asked back in November 2023 versus what you can do today is ginormous. And so it's thinking about the ability of technology to keep growing and utilizing it in such a way that as it grows, it keeps empowering you internally. And so there's a lot of things that come with that, which means like, we're happy to talk about it, but it's the why is these automation that really matters.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about technology and the growth of technology in the recent future. I mean, I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. Hated computer science. One of my least favorite things to do. I mean, I'm an engineer, but with things like ChatGPT and being able to actually learn and grow and understand what's happening and this technology growth that's happening, not just in this industry, but in this world is so fascinating because so many people are adopting technology. And Arun said, everyone's adopting technology. So if you don't adopt technology, you'll be left to the wayside. But it also opens the door, I think, for a lot of us to try and test and iterate and learn and experiment with technology. So I think, Hermione, you made a great point of these large language models, ChatGPT, Anthropic, kind of opened the doors in such a massively opened the doors for us from a technology standpoint, which is great for anyone trying to adopt technology or don't really know much about technology as well. I think one thing I wanted to talk about, and Hermione, you kind of talked about this a little, so I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the human in the loop part of it and how that plays such an important role in the why of technology. Can you talk about a little bit more of, like, especially in healthcare, why that human experience and thinking of technology from a human standpoint is so important?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, ultimately, you said it right. I'm an engineer in the first place. I'm not a utilization management nurse. Like, I don't know better than a UM nurse in the first place. What we're good at, however, is, okay, understanding what is that person doing, like on an entire workflow. What is your workforce focusing on? What are the tasks that keep coming up every day? And it's about taking those processes that sit in people's brain, a mix of people's brain from what I'm finding, a mix of like Microsoft Drive, a mix of like internal documents, putting them together, and then mapping a workflow where actually the humans own it and it's empowering them to do better and focus on things that matter. And human in the loop, like it started kind of before I started this company. I was a grad student at MIT, a researcher in the computer science and AI lab. And there was a very interesting kind of research that was being done at that time, which was basically, they were taking like AI to review radiology reports. And they were looking at accuracy of physicians on their own to be able to diagnose pneumonia on like lung CT scans. Then they trained an AI to look at the lung CT scan and figure out what the accuracy was. The AI and the physician accuracy was pretty much in the same ballpark. Now, when they used the AI in comparison and in conjunction, if I mean, with the physician, that's where actually accuracy shot up all to like the high, like 99.9% accuracy, because there was like a data-driven approach that's consistent in order to like help making decisions. And honestly, I've had that in the back of my mind ever since we started Clarity Care AI, and that's why we spent an entire year working with clinicians to be able to reproduce that so that we can learn and indeed, in the end, create those really high value outcomes. Like AI is not like a magic wand that you throw and you're like throwing ChatGPT at something and it's gonna come up with the answer. I think it's really good at coming up with an answer to something that you kind of have an idea about. If you really don't know, it's kind of tough because it's gonna come up with something and you have kind of no idea of figuring out if that thing is right or not. So it's really good at empowering like subject matter expertise to focus and automate specific things. That's why I think it's human in the loop first before any like full automation.
Yeah. And the same thing with voice agents. I've been in this voice speech recognition space for more than 20 years. The first generation of those tree-based IVRs, I remember we used to work with large cable companies, Comcast, Charter Communications. We used to have teams of 20 plus engineers to build each flow out in painstaking details. And there would be hundreds of pages of Visio diagrams saying how exactly this call is going to flow. Each prompt, reprompt had to be coded manually. If the customer says something like go back, or how many times can you go back, everything had to be coded in painstaking detail before, right? Now with AI, she was talking about how AI, you can train an agent to do workflows. Now the problem has shifted. You can give an AI voice agent overall instructions. You can give it how, the context of the space it is going to figure out the flow, but now you have to observe it very carefully. So from development time, it is actually the testing time has increased, the validation time has increased, right? So humans in the loop are still going to be extremely important, but maybe the nature of the skills you need to build these agents are changing, right? Rather than a lot of painstaking development and large teams, you're going to have to validate them in real life. And probably there will be automated ways to even test these agents.
Yeah, definitely. You actually hit on a really interesting point, is that enhancement of the human experience. So obviously, I would love to hear your take on how you see the transition of employees in the healthcare space or any space as we adopt technology and as we adopt AI, how those roles shift and how they change and kind of get molded into new roles.
Yeah, and I'll take an analogy, right? And Hermione and we both run technology companies, and we have developers. Now, the role of the developer is changing because the developer used to, before vibe coding and before, AI-driven coding tools, they used to, they probably would go to Stack Overflow and try and find modules and try and incorporate them and all that, right? Now you can have, so just in a very similar manner, like how a technology company, the developer role has changed now. They're going to use AI is going to generate the first block of code, but there are lots of things that can go wrong. So you have to now monitor that output very carefully. So from a health plan standpoint, from a TPA standpoint, you have to be that eagle or that hawk that is looking at AI output and making sure you validate that. So that role is going to change because you cannot take what it does for granted. I was just reading I woke up early in the morning today, just reading an article, and I just found out Replit, the AI coding tool, they just went and deleted a whole production database. And you have to be really, really careful, right? So that just got me thinking, yes, we can all have more AI, we have to adopt it, but I think the role of the human in the loop is going to be AI oversight, right? With a lot of reality, like doses of reality in kind of overseeing it.
Yeah. Hermione?
Yeah, I mean, you said it great. I think what matters in the end is that AI is just yet another tool to grow business, to have serve customers well. And so ultimately, I think what matters is still focusing on the metrics that matter to you, to your board, to you personally, and then figuring out based on that first, if there's things that you can actually do based on that. Like I'm really not for like pushing AI just because it's kind of like the hot new thing. It's really about like, can it do something better? If it does, like let's have a look at it. But that's the only thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an important point to bring up of human in the loop, how it affects and not replace but enhance the human experience from an employee standpoint as well as a member standpoint. When the whole AI bus kind of came up and ChatGPT existed, everyone was like, I'm going to lose my job. It was one thing that a lot of people were afraid of, yes. And I think one thing that the emphasis we want to place on AI and technology is it enhances your workflows and it helps you do what you should be doing, which is serving your membership, building your product, and actually the strategy of the overall organization. I think after working for a little bit in the healthcare industry, technology has helped me kind of push what I want and help me focus on at the end of the day, United Ag's mission, which is I want to help my membership. How can I speed up this process to help my membership? And I think technology plays an extremely important role. It's never going to replace me. It's never going to replace the automation, or the work that I'm doing to help my membership, but it'll always enhance and assist that workflow. And I kind of want to pivot a little bit and talk to, I don't know about you, but our engineers' favorite words, which is ROI, return on investment, especially when you're adopting technology. What does it mean at the beginning stages? How do you decide that you want to integrate technology? What does it mean from a management standpoint, from an executive standpoint of what will be my return on investment? So, Arun, what are your thoughts on your return? What you think your return on investment is with technology, specifically with VoiceGain?
Yeah. So I think when we get into conversations with clients, it's really trying to figure out what the cost of handling an interaction is and making sure that AI can enhance it, right? Whether you can fully deflect a call, there is a price. If an AI can fully answer a call, claim status, eligibility verification, things like that, right? There is a savings associated with AI doing it versus a human doing it. Then the second thing is if it's partially, you don't fully automate the call, but can you automate certain tasks in the call? Can you check for compliance? Can you validate HIPAA? Can you summarize the call? There is time metrics, labor metrics associated with each of it, and that's how you calculate the savings. There is also a cost avoidance, which is what United Ag, you guys did, and you were looking not to eliminate agents as much as extend your hours of service. So it's cost avoidance. So sometimes the ROI is, I don't have to hire somebody, and that's where we see a lot of growth from an ROI perspective. AI can avoid a cost increase versus reduce a cost.
Yeah. Mani, any thoughts on how you would compute ROI, especially in the prior auth field and with Clarity Care?
Yeah, no, absolutely. On the prior authorization, well, it's an internal workflow. So how we've defined it is an admin savings portion of it, and then there's a medical cost savings portion of it. The actual metrics that go within the admin savings and the medical cost savings are defined from the interaction with the customer we're serving on what actually matters to you. And it depends. There's organizations that focus on turnaround time. Can I meet my turnaround times for compliance? There's organizations that focus on time spent per review, time spent per case. On the medical cost savings, it's a similar idea. It's like, what was my initial kind of approval rate? What is my approval rate now? Like, what am I, any cost avoidance that you mentioned? And so ROI, yes, there's a global ROI that you can unlock, but most importantly, because it's custom to your workflows, ROI needs to be defined in conjunction with you so that you create an environment where we can meet expectation and satisfy each other's outcome and unlock possibilities. And I think that's a little bit of a change from like ROI from a truly like software SaaS-based where there's no like kind of additional services on top of it. But just to go back to your previous question, Aniket, I was on the use of AI in the industry. I thought, I mean, we're technologists, like it's kind of, yes, we use AI everywhere. I'm actually super curious about how you guys, if you use any type of tool today. And I know we had published a survey that some of you answered, and thank you so much for that. I'd be super curious if some of you are able to share how you're using AI in your workflows. And I know there's questions as well, so we can do either.
Awesome, thank you guys so much. I had to come up here and ask a question. I love AI. We specifically do AI. I'm Angel Noha. We specifically do AI for TPAs. I'm curious to hear about how you guys are handling security. That's something that we think a lot about, and I think there's a common misconception, especially for people that may not have sort of a strong understanding of how AI can implement in workflows, especially dealing with PHI and all these things that need to stay in-house. So would love if you guys could talk a little bit more about how you're handling security within your specific companies.
Absolutely.
You want me to go first? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
At VoiceGain, obviously this is a hot topic. We make sure that we have a very strong process with respect to security. We have been on a SOC 2 journey. We are SOC 2 Type 2 certified, making sure that every data is encrypted at rest and in transit. All of that information that the PII information, especially that we get, is redacted, because obviously as a speech and a voice AI company, we do want to make sure when we are storing data that all the PII data is redacted. It's only used in memory processing, things like that. Obviously, we sign BAA agreements. Not only do we sign BAA agreements with our customers, but we have back-to-back BAA agreements with OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, for the large language models. It's our own speech-to-text engine, so that's covered. But for the LLMs itself, right, we do make sure we have all of those in place. But that being said, security is a journey, right? It's not a once-and-done thing. You can never be fully secure. You just have to keep at it and keep improving it over a period of time.
Yeah, wouldn't have said it better. I think like the one thing I can add is because we're maybe younger companies, we started 2 years ago, we knew when we started that we were going to process PHI and PII because that's the essence of processing medical records for prior auth. And so we built the company and the platform, with every building block being focused on privacy and security. And it's kind of it's kind of cheating in a way, because we were able to do that because we started from zero. So it's harder to kind of go and meet those security standards when you're not starting from scratch. But same as Arun, like SOC 2 Type 2, HIPAA, there's high trust that we're on the path to. Now we're also we're answering an RFA for Medicare, and so for the federal government, there's even more requirements like FedRAMP, ATOs, and all of that. And it's a journey, just like you said. You're meeting some requirements, and then you have to be audited. And my co-founder Alex comes from the security space, so I'm very lucky to work with him to be able to answer that.
Yeah, from a TPA standpoint, and from someone that builds from the inside, a lot of what I'm doing, especially as an R&D engineer, is building everything within our internal infrastructure. It's so huge to ensure that from a security standpoint, you have a data governance team, you have documents aligned, like Arun said, BAAs with companies like OpenAI or different vendors that we're working with. But I actually build a lot of stuff myself on local models within our internal infrastructure. Yes. And especially from a prototyping phase, from an initial build phase, you never want to just jump into a production because, like you said, there are security and data security issues, PHI, HIPAA compliancy, stuff like that. So especially from a bigger company that's already established, or a TPA that's trying to integrate technology in, I would strongly recommend just building and within your own infrastructure, working on open source projects that you can just keep locked down within that internal infrastructure. And I think that definitely is also a big thing for someone that's not necessarily starting from scratch, like you were saying, but wants to kind of build from where they're already existing. And I think, Ernie, you had a question. Are we going to go back to the how we're using AI in companies?
No, it's a different approach, and I'm going to ask the audience to indulge and perhaps you to respond on pre-authorization.
Sure. Hermione, do you want to take pre-authorization?
Pre-authorization is responding to a decision that has already been made. The doctor has already selected a procedure and a facility. What if there was a way to go back to the decision point and insert the process of pre-auth? In other words, you go to Judy in Wisconsin and you talk to Epic. You go to Larry Ellison at Oracle, which owns Cerner, or Athena, or any of the other electronic medical records. Talk to them about putting in an API that would, in essence, assist the physician as a partner in directing the patient to the appropriate care. Now you can do everything that you would have done in pre-auth, but now you're a partner, and now to the patient, it is seamless. How would you approach that process?
Yeah, that's the vision that we have. I'm a strong believer in real-time prior authorizations at the point of care, and that's what we're building for. Now, how do you actually get there? We started on processing auth on the payer side because that's where most of the volume is, and that's where we can learn the most in order to make sure we're making the right decisions, the right sourcing of information. How we go about, to answer your question, and go for EHRs, APIs. Actually, there's regulation now that's pushing EHRs and payers to have FHIR endpoints, API endpoints, to connect to one another. The issue with those is that they're not being used. And one of the challenges with that is when you have standards like FHIR, it's a great open source standard, there's always that other category. And when you don't know how to fill a standard, you end up with having in that other category virtually everything about the authorization compared to everything else. So it's a challenge to kind of do it today, I would say, and I would love to go to Wisconsin and meet Judy and do this together, let me tell you that. We think that in order to get there, and we're building for there, we need to have that engine in the first place, and that's also why we're answering that RFA, because the federal government wants people to do real-time authorization. So,
Hermione, you've got 100 test tubes right here that would love to be the first innovator in this very arguing space of pre-auth.
Very cool.
For real-time auth, I'm like, let's talk.
I think Greg had a question.
Oh.
Yeah, thanks. Just, I guess, first a response to your question about how we're using AI. And I think, having talked to a lot of other TPAs, I think we tend to be about the same place in our journey, which is, we're starting to use it maybe for kind of exploring business strategies and things at an executive level. And of course, we're all pretty proud of ourselves for figuring that out in terms of how to create marketing content or make our RFP responses look a little better. But I think a lot of us, I don't want to speak for everybody because that's not appropriate, but I find that we at Delta, thank you, are kind of always trying to struggle to get started on that first project, right?
Yes.
So we have our own IT staff, we do web design and small data projects. And so I guess one of my questions, because I think it would help a lot of us sort of get oriented to this big thing by trying to grab onto it in some small way. Are there projects that you might recommend to us to kind of start on? Like where do we get started to like really understand what this tool can do for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was something that I asked myself when I joined United Ag is how do you adopt? You can't, like Arun said yesterday, you can't just start boiling the ocean. It's not possible to just jump into something and do it, right? So it's a great question to ask, and I can kind of talk a little bit about what we did at United Ag. One thing that I really wanted to focus on was actually meeting with our employees and actually learning what they do. I was new to the healthcare field, so a lot of this was very much a learning opportunity to me is what do you do on a day-to-day basis and how can I help you? And a lot of that ended up being just basic workflow automations, small little tasks that we talked about, just helping with human in the loop automate certain tasks, whether that's a manual data entry of an Excel, or you taking PDFs of eligibility and writing them down and inserting it into a document. What I did was I wanted to start extremely basic and not even looking necessarily at artificial intelligence like ChatGPT or machine learning, but how can I take your current workflow and automate it so that you can now focus on something else or use that to enhance the process that you're actually working on. So I think what really worked at United Ag, and I honestly, I thank the employees that we have because they were willing to let me sit and just barrage them with a bunch of questions. But just getting to know what's happening on a day-to-day level from an operations standpoint is huge. Especially when you have, I talked about this a little bit with Microsoft Fabric, but if you have silos and departments, and a lot of bigger companies have large departments that their whole job is to do that one thing. At United Ag, we're a very cross-functional departmental company, and we work very well with each other, but just sitting down and saying, hey, how do you adjudicate a claim? Or how do you audit a claim? Or what are you doing for your eligibility pipelines? And getting to learn about that and remove those barriers and silos, I think is the first step that I saw when I was joining United Ag is I may be part of the IT team, I may be the data engineer and serving data, and at the end of the day, getting reports out, excuse me, and serving our members is important. But what are you also doing on your day-to-day? And I think that helped really push and push the conversation of technologies, because once I can automate a simple task of a simple script that just automatically plugs in from a document into an Excel, as something as simple as that actually helped give other people ideas of and gave them a perspective of how they themselves can think differently.
And that sounds like a great kind of starter project. So if I could just poke and get some free advice. So I get all these PDFs in my organization. I got people that read them, and so looking for opportunities like we get a PDF, we have access to some sort of language model. We just hand it over and say, here are the things I want you to tell me, or do you, how structured do we kind of start with this project?
Yeah, so I actually started I didn't even use ChatGPT when I first started. I actually just built an extremely basic Python script. And Python just has a lot of packages that you can use that can pull and extract data out of it. And it was like a 20-line code that was like, just pull everything that you see from this PDF, and then I will manipulate it afterwards. And I think, Hermione, actually, you could probably talk a little bit about like the LLM context window and stuff. I mean, there are very much opportunities where you can take a PDF and toss it into an LLM and say, pull out these relevant documents.
Yes.
My favorite prompt is provide a concise and impactful summary for this document. Like that's literally the prompt that I use, I think, the most. And that's a good start because then you're like, okay, that's the summary. Then if there's specific things that you do to your PDFs, then you kind of figure it out from what your folks are doing on them, and then you can configure that. But doing a summary in the first place is very helpful, in my opinion, at least. And specifically, like concise, impactful, I'm very happy with that outcome.
Yeah. Arun, do you have anything?
Yeah, and my lesson is also from United Ag. What Sonia and team did is in choosing the right size, the scope of the project to get started. And you can learn from them on how, and it was in collaboration because we as sometimes AI vendors, we do have the thing that AI can do everything. So we also need direction in those conversations with clients as to where to start. So they really picked a very impactful problem, which was the right size and scope. And then it was really easy for us to hone in on that, right? So they picked eligibility and insurance verification to get started with the voice AI journey on the provider side, which I think is a great place to start. But it came because the internal team was thinking about how to use this tool, and it was their idea to get started on that journey. Because we told them what the tool is capable of doing, but then they went back to how does it, and I think maybe they can describe it better than, but they selected the scope and we said we could do it. That's a great way to talk to somebody because can you solve this problem? You know which problem is burning and then you get through the discussions with the right scope. And then of course, it needs a very tight project execution focus to get the implementation right. That's the key part. You cannot let these projects drag on because, then you're like, you lead, it's a cycle of disappointment after that, right? So.
If I can just add one thing, I would say just to what projects to start with. Honestly, I would say what these guys are doing at VoiceGain, and you start by just transcripting calls. It's literally not changing anything to what your team is currently doing. It's just kind of adding value to creating summaries. And even that is a really is a lower hanging fruit to get in, and it provides value to just transcript the calls in the first place. It's not even disturbing the conversation with the member. So I think it's a very smart place to start.
So piggybacking on that, first of all, you guys are all amazing. I mean, Hermione, when you reached out to me, I'm like, MIT, how do you decide that you want to get involved in our industry, right? So amazing. But to piggyback on what Greg is saying, we're all entering our budget season. TPAs have always been running on a lean and mean budget, right? That's what we do and we do well. How do you propose that we should be looking at adding another line item on already a limited budget to try and accomplish certain tasks, even limited in scope, whatever? If you could give some information about that, ROI is great, but you have to start first with an investment, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, one thing that I'm doing at United Ag is I'm not even adding that line item to the budget. Everything I've been doing from a physical cost standpoint is free. What I'm doing is actually just time. It takes time to test, and especially as you're trying to learn, it takes time. But there's a lot of opportunities out there, especially for something as basic as data entry or automating those things. Python is free that you can download. There's free open source packages that you can use. So from a cost standpoint, I think even just getting your foot in the door, there's a lot of opportunities where you don't even have to add that line item. And sometimes that line item from a technology standpoint, especially in a growing world with software development and all the different industries that are innovating, I use a lot of the stuff that I'm building internally in-house. I've not spent a single dollar on because I want to prove to my leadership that this is a product that we should use. But how do I prove to leadership? I don't want to tell them I need to spend $100,000 on this tool because that's what we need to do. It's not a sell. It's not even a sell at all, right? I can't do that and say, hey, let's spend $50K on this tool and maybe it'll work. So my philosophy is if I can prove my concept fully 100% for free, and show the impacts of that work to leadership, that's where you can then, in a future season or later down the line, add that line item and look into more of those complex solutions, whether that be paying for a subscription or looking into different vendors like VoiceGain and Clarity Care. So to answer your question, I know this is a little different. I'm very much an R&D engineer. My whole goal is to prove concept and then sell the product. You can't sell a product if you don't know what that product is going to do. And I would never recommend buying a product if you don't know what that product is inherently going to do, right? So like you said, from an ROI standpoint, there's nothing that I'm trying to add to my leadership's line item for budget season, because I don't want them to have to make that hard decision without knowing what's fully in front of them.
Yeah, in our business, I always ask our clients, okay, you don't need a separate budget for voice AI, because if you are planning to hire human agents to grow next year, let's say you're going to grow 20%. That 20% growth you're trying to fund in your budget, you would have probably had a line item for adding human agents. Can we supplement that? In United Ag's case, they were looking to extend their hours of service. That was a service they wanted to offer. Now they had a choice. To extend the hours of service, do they hire human agents or do they start with AI, right? So it's usually, that's kind of where we go and have those discussions with. So the way to think about AI, unlike traditional SaaS, is probably there is budgets in the operational side already budgeted. And now you're asking the question, should you do it with human or AI? Right? If you're in, I guess, Hermione's case, I'm just guessing that you probably have a budget for nurses and and all that. So can you prevent that? Can you just not linearly scale? Right? Maybe I'll turn it over to you.
I mean, what you said, and I didn't even come up with it, honestly, but like to answer your question, where did you put it in a line item? One of our customers was like, okay, I was planning on hiring a nurse. Here's what I'm willing to spend on this. How much can you do for me? And so the budget was actually HR.
Yes.
I'll add just another thing, which is willingness to put the fee at risk when you're starting the implementation to prove the ROI is also something that we've explored, and that aligns incentives if both parties are willing to make it work, and that's something that we've done that we found success in as well.
And there is an upfront cost. What we have learned, again, working with customers, just amortize that, make it success-based and amortize it over a duration so that it doesn't impact, and you can see savings from month 1, month 2, whatever, right? That's another thing we've learned, because there is a cost to sometimes setting this up, because you have to integrate with your systems, with their systems. So and we always give that option. Let's do a 3-year where you can get out. And that's one of the things that United Ag wanted. We should be able to get out if this doesn't work. Yes, you should be able to get out. But can we amortize the upfront costs? Yeah.
I have a question. Pardon my voice. When you're at a TPA, you work with multiple channel partners. So when you're talking about the cost of implementing something like this, how do you use your channel partners to actually, how you're engaging with them, to maybe lean into them to carry some of that cost, because it's something that you're backing into by already partnering with them?
Yeah, I think one of the ways at least one of the channel partners, at least for what we do on the AI voice side, is there are a couple of things, right? One are the phone systems themselves. TPAs use different phone systems, right? Can we do the cost of integration with one phone system, put it out in the marketplace so that each TPA doesn't have to pay for integration costs over and over and over again? So that's one way we go out there in the marketplace and do that. Same things with claim systems, right? Can we do from a channel partner perspective? In fact, yesterday we had a prospect drop by and said, hey, you should talk to this claim system vendor and make sure you guys are already pre-integrated. Can you pre-integrate with all of that so that each TPA doesn't incur the cost of that? And so I think that's kind of going to be the key. As both of us start growing our businesses, we will see that there are these 5 or 6 channel partners systems that we need to integrate with and take away the cost of integrating from each TPA, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, on integration, I think the power of being able to automate workflows is automating clicks. And automating clicks means that you don't necessarily have to build a backdoor into all the software that you have. And what we've done is that there's virtually no integration because we log in like a user. So by being able to do that, that means that you don't have integration for starters. I mean, you have the same integration that when you hire someone. So, but I'm with you on the channel partnerships, which is actually someone here as well. I've seen the platform a couple times from our customers, and so I came up to them. I was like, so we have an AI agent that's actually, like roaming through your platform. Maybe we should talk and like kind of expand that because it could add value to the other folks that you have there. But yeah, I think like the key point is just being able to go through the front door and not having to build an entire kind of like API backend system. I mean, APIs are great, don't get me wrong, but in order to get started, the lower lift is just logging in like a human. Just it doesn't have bones, it's more like.
I'm actually kind of glad you brought that question up because I actually did want to talk a little bit about integration and implementation, especially as working with VoiceGain. Implementation is a huge thing when it comes to adopting technology. You could have the best product in the world and the implementation could be horrendous and it kind of turns you off on technology, right? So I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of integration. And Arun, we've worked with VoiceGain obviously for a little bit of time now. So could you talk a little bit about the difficulties and the positives that come out of integration and how that's helping shape TPAs and other companies adopt technology?
Yeah, I think firstly, you guys have an amazing team of technology and made our job much easier because right up front, you guys understood, okay, this is the data feeds that the AI voice agent needs for it to answer questions, right? So of course, it goes back to what Hermione said, what are the things that the human agent uses? Is it these claims systems, these eligibility files, right? So I think from an implementation standpoint, overall, it took about 2 months. We would meet every week. First, we set key milestones, right? We identified the integration points that the AI voice agent needs to have. It needs to be able to get all of this data. How do we get it securely? Right? That was one integration point. The other integration point was the phone system. You guys had to go back to your phone system vendor and ask for API access, which was not something you were using right now. And right up front, we identified that that's an integration point. So we had in the weekly call, one of your telecom leads go in and get that and give us API access. Right? So identifying it upfront, planning it, right? And meeting on a weekly basis, identifying those from a project deliverable standpoint, those milestones and tracking against it was really important. But I think the key is right upfront, ask what the integration, when you're writing your statement of work for integrating an AI into your operations, ask what are all the systems that your AI agent needs to touch, right? And that's very often what Hermione said, it's what a human agent would need. What they are touching in the first place. Write that down, and then obviously, backend systems like telecom and CRM and things like that come in, planning that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would argue that's the part that takes the most time. Maybe if integration, we think about it as like integrating like a system to another system. I think the parallel with building AI workflows is rather knowledge in someone's brain and putting it on paper. And that's like kind of like the different type of integration that we have to do today, which means like extracting that information and like making sure that you know that this information lies in someone's brains in the first place, getting it out, and then pushing it into something that can be automated. And I think that's the trickier part.
Yeah. And I would also like to add one thing is the testing at the end. Right? Implementation requires very good end user testing, which is where the TPA and the health plan they play a very important role, because making sure that, and we built the AI voice agent and we handed it to Sonia's team and said, try and break this, right? Really, really important, just break this. Say anything that we wouldn't think of as engineers, right? From real life. And that was a very important part of the implementation cycle. And it also helps because as a TPA, you get confidence when you try and break it and it doesn't break, right? Or you find out it breaks in these edge cases and you fix it and then you implement it back.
Yeah, definitely. And Angel, I'll get to you in a quick sec, but just as a quick follow-up, what would you say to TPAs or companies that are trying to adopt and don't know what the integration will look like? Obviously, when it comes to implementing new technology, there's the sell of this technology is something we want to use, but there's also a little bit of that unknown factor.
Yes.
And I know this is a little bit of a curveball, but like, what do you think is the challenge from a TPA standpoint of why you need to go through that implementation process and the importance of that?
Yeah, I think the first step is identifying the scope of putting the boundary around the integration, right? What are all the different systems that you need to touch? And then the TPA thinking, are these my long-term partners? Like for example, claims, right? I was talking to a TPA. They immediately knew that the AI voice agent needs to talk to the claims backend, and they were going to change their claims backend. So they're like, oh, should I do it now, or should I wait for the claims claims backend system to be upgraded, right? So it's setting that scope, and then some systems are open. So it's having the conversations with those individual integration points and saying, do you have open APIs? Can we get the data from your systems? Because actually the data belongs to the customer and actually the TPA. You own it, actually, on behalf of the customer, of course. But that's the important, I think, discussion, setting that scope and asking how hard and rating it. Can you come up with a 1 to 5? How difficult is it? Have you done it before? Has the vendor done it before? If I'm a TPA, I want to know, have you integrated with the system before, right? Those are some of the things I would think of.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest is 0 to 1, right? Like just getting in the door to do one specific thing and one specific thing well. Very big advocate on just focusing on one thing. I think someone asked me, I think it was you, Annika, yesterday, what's the difference between what my AI team is doing internally for a global organization versus like an AI startup? And my answer was focus. And so like we do this all day long. We're focusing on building this one thing. And that's why ultimately folks buy services and products. It's because they're buying convenience, that one thing where these people focus on it 24/7. They can do it well. And so you're kind of trusting someone to do that very well. And so to go back to like how does it work well for an integration? It's first focus so that the 0 to 1 phase works well, and then you can go from 1 to 100 much better when you have the good basis of going from 0 to 1.
Yeah, definitely. Angel?
I'd love if you guys can share for TPAs that are looking to implement AI from an engineering perspective, outside of what you're currently building, what workflows do you think are really great for automation, specifically for AI, and what workflows do you think AI might struggle with?
That's an interesting question. I can talk a little bit to United Ag. Obviously, I don't know from a holistic TPA standpoint what's happening, but what I've noticed actually is AI and automation can play a huge role actually in data entry. That's one thing that's was the gateway for me of getting started in AI and automation is in specific departments where you're working with providers or vendors that are still handing you pieces of paper or mailing you things or faxing you things. AI and automation plays a huge role there. Obviously, I don't know from a holistic TPA standpoint. It can change department by department within different TPAs. But eligibility is something that was a very big thing for us, and being able to figure out solutions. And eligibility is such an important. I mean, it's the backbone of your membership getting their services, right? So focusing on those mission critical type of workflows. A big thing was eligibility. Claims, there's also a lot of room for growth from an automation standpoint. And these days, a lot of people are talking about auto adjudication, things like that. Obviously, there's the positive and negatives that come around with that. And I know it can depend TPA by TPA, business by business. But for me, a lot of it was how do I disrupt the status quo of healthcare? And a lot of that, interestingly enough, when I joined was we still get emails, we still get physical faxes, we get mailed eligibility documents, which was fascinating to me as someone that was coming from a very tech-forward background. I worked in hydrogen fuel tech. I never saw paper while I was working there. Even the stuff I worked on, it was on my tablet. I was building 3D models on a tablet. I wasn't drafting or drawing or doing anything on physicalized things. So a lot of that automation and AI actually came from how do we move that physicalized in some cases outdated practices that are happening. And I can obviously talk on the TPA side, but I'm curious to hear from your perspective, especially working purely in AI, both Hermione and Arun, where you see those potential disruptions and how the gateways into.
Yeah, I think just taking a broader picture, like document retrieval, summarization, understanding is a great use case. I guess what's not, you also asked what's not a good place, I guess, is all the empathy-oriented parts, because care, at the end of the day, you're all providing, in the business of providing care to patients, and we are all patients as human beings, and so you don't want probably AI to do all the real care-oriented things today. It's obviously not a good idea, although there are people building AI chatbots that can provide counseling and all of that, but I think that's just a couple of ideas around where you can use and where you cannot use.
Yeah, I think globally on any workflow that involves a human expert, the automation, the potential for automation is kind of like turning a knob, right? Like if you open it a little bit, a little more, and what the systems are good at is making sure to identify, or what you need to make the systems good at, is identifying what's the threshold of involving a human. So like in a payment integrity, for example, could be an interesting one where, okay, so like you're gonna be reviewing items and flagging where you want someone to focus on. And that's like somewhat automated. But it's really important because then you help people focus on like the really, really important cases. It's kind of like this, from 0 to 100, you're thinking today what you're doing maybe is you're like 100% human, 0% automation, and then you have all the other way on the other end is like 100% automation, 0% human. And no matter what the workflow you're trying to automate, it's thinking, okay, I'm gonna do it a little bit, I'm gonna turn it on, and that's like any solution that you want to buy. I think we need to think about it in terms of, can I go further and can I learn? As I deploy this at scale, can I turn this more to make sure that I'm doing it safely and automate it more? And so I don't know if there's a specific workflow. I think you can do that broadly on any workflow, and it's just like, maybe your question is what's the highest one that you can turn on like quickly? I'm a big fan of transcription. Like the AI scribe for doctor's office is like the fastest product adoption ever in healthcare, faster than EHRs. So I think like that's a really, really cool product for patient and provider interactions. And so like transcription of calls, I think is a really, really, really ripe one, commoditized one.
I'm going to pose a question to the audience as well, and I hope a few of you come up and tell us. I'm kind of curious what your current day hesitancy is of adoption, or like what you are struggling with from a day-to-day, and why maybe some things are working and some things are not working. But I do, if you guys wanted to come up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But just to ask the panelists, what have you seen from the industry as you're trying to grow and build and like kind of disrupt the status quo? What have you seen as a potential solution to help kind of sway the minds of people that are slightly more hesitant and have more of a struggle trying to see the ROI and the impact of technology?
I think the key is just constant communication and checking in, because things are changing so much. I mean, 1 year back to now, the token costs of LLMs have probably gone down by like 80%, I would say. So what was not feasible 1 year back is probably feasible now, right? From an ROI, you're talking about getting started. Things are getting more and more, as I said, I still go back to that example. We used to have 25 people managing a call flow. And it used to cost lots of money to build AI voice that generation. But right now it's come down to the level where even somebody with 15, 20 people in the call center, you don't need to have thousands of calls to get started, right? So that's what I would say from at least what I have seen.
Yeah, I think a year ago, when I spoke to folks in the industry on the health plan and TPA side, probably I was kind of like, who's the crazy girl here? Like, what's she talking about, AI? Like, and then honestly, like in the past 6 months, like now I'm like, okay, AI this, everyone, like you guys know so much and it's really impressive how fast like you guys know about it, and now it must be so hard. Like I feel for you to like figure out what's actually working or not, because now it's like AI. And even for us, like in Silicon Valley, like you add AI to a pitch deck and then you boost your valuation by like, I don't know, like 200% or something. So like figuring out actually what works, I think is also about like trust in the person. I think what Kirsty mentioned on the call was like, is the founder involved in like developing that product? Do they understand their customer?
that was the key.
Like, are they in? And I think that's what
Yeah,
you said about your company, because you're really hands-on and you're like actually in there, in the trenches. And I think that's something that matters. But like, honestly, you have to tell us, like, how do you like make the difference in the noise? Like, I'm super curious. Like,
Hear from folks, yes.
Yeah, out of curiosity, we have about 20 minutes left, but after this conversation, who is more willing to adopt technology after hearing us talk, and who's not willing to adopt technology? I mean, for a show of hands, like, you heard this panel and you were like, nah, I don't know, AI is probably not the way to go. Is there anyone in the audience? I really hope not. All right, cool, yeah, so that's awesome. Well, I mean, if you would love to kind of, oh, there we go, we have one. I love this.
So you guys have spoken to this a little bit, but recently we were trying to tackle the IDR challenge, right? A ton are coming in an unexpected volume. Our humans were working way too much and couldn't handle it. So we used an API to do that. It's working great. Those are loading into the system. And that has created this concept that APIs are magic and AI is magic and everything can do everything. And that's wonderful. Like, I love the enthusiasm, but how do you go about setting expectations when they're excited, right? Like, I want to build on that momentum and excitement, but I don't want to experience the technology avoidance that comes when the next project isn't magic, right? When it takes a little bit longer, it doesn't do everything we thought it could do.
Yeah, I think it's the right scope, but that's what I think United Ag really did well. Don't try to boil the ocean. Actually, it's almost better to, I mean, like anything in life, under promise, over deliver, right? Like, just make sure that you work with partners that can say, this is what AI can do. It has done this for these customers. This is what they are seeing. This is the automation rates you're seeing. And then go from there. Build on top of what has already been done. And then there will be things that you will experiment. And it's okay to experiment and say we're going to experiment, do it after hours. Let's figure out what happens. And we'll see what, the final, the end member calling in or the provider calling in, they are the final arbiter of, is this worth their time or not, right? So I think the scope determination, in my view, is the key. Selecting the right scope is half the battle. Not too small that it doesn't matter, nobody cares, and not too large that you're trying to boil the ocean. Just selecting that right scope is, I think, the key.
Yeah, I'm with you on scope and making sure, like, I'll be very honest, when we started, we didn't do that, like setting success criteria, and we failed. So you're absolutely right. Like, yes, AI, like, there's lots of expectation on like, AI, magic wand, let's do all of this. And then if you don't like set actual metrics that you track all the way, like on a daily basis, like real time, then you don't know what you're measuring. And honestly, it's like company building, I would say. And what I say to my team, if we don't have a goal, there's no way we can like take the proper actions in order to get to that goal. Yeah. And so I guess I learned it the hard way, but at least now we do it. Yeah. Which is, you align on success criteria, what do you care most about, and then we can build towards that. Because no goal, you can't steer the ship towards the right direction.
And we have this, and just to add to that, our internal ML engineers would come and tell me, hey, I listen to all these calls, I can do 75, 80% automation, done. Right? And then you go and you try it. And then you're like, you told me 75%. But then, people are not cooperating with the system. They say agent, they're going to take some time. Then you realize, okay, you know what? And that's why I think you need people who have had that cold dose of reality of like, where your enthusiasm and exuberance meets like reality, and that collision needs to happen, and then you see, okay, what are you looking at, right? And I think you just need the scars of execution. I think that's the key.
I think even backing up as well, what I saw at United Ag was even just, we were talking about this yesterday, I think Julie, you were talking about this during the change management session, is culture. I think culture itself drives technology and drives innovation. I think a company like United Ag it was so great for me to innovate at United Ag because no one's saying no. And when it comes to innovation, when it comes to technology, when it comes to honestly anything, there's most of it is failure, right? But who is allowing you to push through those failures and try? So with exuberance, I'm always excited if someone's excited, And and especially at a company that fosters good culture and fosters growth, you will find that you can take that exuberance and you can take the negativity of failing, and then unfortunately it happens quite a bit. But if you have people that surround you and you have management that are ready to say, hey, try something new, do something else. Let's try a new topic. I think that itself actually helps not alleviate the exuberance, but adds to the exuberance. My manager, recently I came up to him and I asked him, I was like, hey, I kind of want to build, I don't know how to do this, and I have no clue if what the scope is here, but I want to build an internal LLM for our claims auditors. And he was like, yeah, go for it. If you fail, you move on to the next product. And I think that culture and that drive was, I got very excited. I spent 20 hours like a day working on this thing, and I'm honestly, to be totally honest with you, right now going nowhere with it. But they are so much open. They're so okay with that. They're so okay that I can jump in the deep end and learn to swim. If you have a mindset at companies that don't like that growth, or it's not that they don't like that, but kind of stunt that growth, it can obviously kill that exuberance and kill that drive. And I think even just backing up out of the scope, obviously, which is extremely important, is like outlining what you actually want to do, but it's providing support and providing that exuberance from a management standpoint to pursue that exuberance. Like Julie was saying yesterday, like change management, like the culture that you have is what actually, the employees that you have at the company is what drives the company. And being able to foster that growth is what will help drive innovation, and you'll reap rewards of the exuberance that you have from people that want to grow.
So you guys are up there talking about how you embrace this technology. This is what drives you, motivates you. You get a lot of excitement out of it. What do you recommend for individuals or organizations that are challenged with employees that are not really ready to let go of that? Like they have this perception in their mind, it's going to eliminate their position, you want to get rid of me. How do you suggest that we help them embrace these changes?
I can talk a little bit from the TPA standpoint. I think a lot of it is framing perspective. As we're talking today, you've heard the word human in the loop a lot, right? When it comes to building new technology, incorporating, it doesn't even have to be technology, incorporating new workflows or new ideas, it's framing that perspective to the employees that you have and allowing them to, like Arun was saying, be part of that journey, I think really helps allow them to see and understand what we're trying to push. I mean, we're engineers. We're always going to push technology. That's our whole shtick, right? I'm going to shove technology down your mouth because that's what I love doing. But to your point is there are people that you will encounter that it's a tougher sell, and being able to understand from their rationale and I think a lot of it is when it comes to and a lot of salespeople here will say it's selling is learning who you're talking to. And especially when it comes to technology, it's internally to management, to other employees. A lot of it is selling your idea, and with selling comes how can I help you understand and frame that perspective so that you know and you're self-assured that I am not here to replace you, because human in the loop, especially in healthcare, is so important. I am not here to do your job. Technology is not here to do your job. So it's helping them understand that I am framing this in a specific way. I am pushing technology, but this is ideally to work with you and to bring you along on the ride, I think is very important. Sometimes if you push an initiative and it's a little different from where I am because I'm pushing from the bottom up, obviously. But when you push initiatives, sometimes it's hard to see the rationale of why we're doing this. But I think being able to frame that perspective, being able to talk to the people that are there, allows for bringing people along that goal and aligning yourselves. And we were talking about, I think, EOS systems yesterday, and one of them is vision, right? Vision is one of the big cruxes of the 6 pillars, I think, in the book that was written. So allowing everyone to align that vision and see it definitely can help foster a little bit of that growth. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about being level with people, like what's going to happen, and if there should be benefits from AI, and sharing it with them. Then you're actually walking the walk and not just talking the talk. If you can improve the productivity of the people, then you should be willing to share some of the benefits that the organization gets with them. So in whatever way that may be, right? And if there are some people that are not going to, if they're going to be impacted, again, being level with them. Hopefully the company is growing at 20, 30%, and you can say, hey, I want you to do more to support the growth of 20 to 30%, and we are as management willing to share some of the benefits with you, because you're now going to be AI assisted and your productivity is going to increase, and so you're going to be able to do more. But I think it all starts with being transparent and level. Why are you implementing it? Are you implementing to scale your business, or are you just going to improve the bottom line? There may be some businesses that need to stay alive, and they may need to use AI to cut jobs because they need to survive. I'm not saying they're not, but then there are also the positive side. There are companies that are growing and that can do with the same set of employees, and hopefully these companies will share the benefits of AI with their employees.
Yeah, I think on the team that's not necessarily ready to use AI, kind of happened for us like in a serendipity fashion. The first like crazy people, I love them. The first people that trusted us to work with them and say, yeah, like we'll go with you guys. We actually like spent a lot of time in their offices, and kind of as I was wandering around, and then I walked into a room where there's like 50 appeals nurses, and ended up spending the entire day with them. And that was key, because in the end, one, I learned a lot and I was very grateful, and then I understand what they actually cared about. Because it's one thing to sell efficiency to executives, of course, but then you need the users to adopt it, because if they don't adopt it, you can invest all you want, you're not going to reap the benefits of it. So by being able to be there and be with the team, and like I think every single one of our users has my cell phone today number, and they can like ping me, and they like send me feature requests all the time, and they're like, oh, can we add this, can we do that, like this is great, this is not good. And so I think that creates like trust, and in the end, organizations, we're all humans. Like we're here to stay. Like even though AI is going to get smarter, we're still growing like population. We're going like we're 8 billion these days. Like it's not going away. So it's humans talking to humans. It's emotional intelligence and understanding what people care about and making sure you're addressing that. And I mean, like everyone, I spend my life on the road, going and meeting those teams in person in order to make sure like we're serving their needs in the end. It's about the pain points.
Hi, this is more of a comment that I wanted to make for those that are thinking of integrating this into your corporation. For us, we knew we had a problem. We had been talking about what we can do with our eligibility. We get a lot of provider calls, and our agents were really busy just taking a lot of those calls versus helping our members, which are the most important part of organization. So we tried different things before going to Arun. We tried switching up the IVR. We tried putting the providers on hold much longer. We tried several things before we really stepped up to the next level, right? When those things didn't work, we said, okay, we ran out of ideas. We put the providers on hold for 15, 14 minutes. That didn't work because it was still holding. So we said, what else can we do, right? What other ideas are out there for us? And we had met Arun about 1.5 years ago or so, and he brought this idea to us, and it was until we sat down for our corporation annual meeting retreat where we talked about goals for the organization, and we said, okay, this is one of our goals. How do we fix this problem that we have? And Arun came back to our minds, and we said, okay, let's reach out to Arun and see what we can do with that. And that's how this whole project started. So we knew we had a problem. How do we tackle it? What have we done already? We went for Arun and talked to him and what he would offer, and we started the implementation process. And I think it's been so helpful because his team has been so connected and understands what we want and are very responsive to our needs. So if something needs fixing, they're really quick of doing it right in the moment. They're really quick, reaching out to me or asking, how is this working? Did this make a difference? Arun has been present in our meetings as well. So it's just made a huge difference. So his team has been really great. And of course, my team has been really excited because we've been doing a lot of testing. So that's one of the things that we've been doing is just testing our AI agent. And I'm here, I see messages, this is amazing, this is great, oh my God, this is so cool, because of the way that the AI is responding. And one of the coolest things for our team was to name our agent. So we got to name her, we got to choose her voice, so that was a fun part for us. But if you are thinking or doubting, I would really consider and really think about what is the one thing that's missing or the one problem that you haven't solved that you could probably use an AI for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No,
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So you asked the question. Oh, my name is Aslan. I'm with Berkeley, and I'm with a stop loss company. So I don't have customer service and things like that we're looking at. But you asked what are the things that we're afraid of. Why don't we use it? So I will say that for me personally, I'm afraid of hallucinations. I'm also afraid of, I want to say, limited scope of what it's looking for. And I'll give you an example. Like a lot of times I do a lot of research in terms of what's going on in the industry in terms of where is medical cost trend going? Where are, how many employers are adopting GLP-1s for non-diabetic usage and very specific things. And as I'm looking through articles, sometimes we have a stopgap, I think, like Microsoft Copilot, so there's no worry about stuff going wherever it is. I'm not at all technology, so, forgive me. But, and so sometimes I'm like, okay, well, what are some other sources besides the ones that I normally look at? And so I put a question in Microsoft Copilot, and it gives me a couple of articles. And then it's not exactly what I'm looking for, so I ask another question, and I try and be a little bit more specific. But it pulls up the same articles again, just different sections of it. And I'm like, and I had already read the article, and I'm like, but that's not even what that section is talking about. Why are you giving me back that? And so then I'm frustrated with it, and so then I don't use it because it's easier for me to be confident. And I think someone was talking about this the other day where they were like, you're just used to doing it yourself and it's hard to delegate. So I will say straight up, I am one of those people to begin with, but I'm trying to do this, and so I'm frustrated. Or I ask it questions like, well, what's the AWP of something, and it says, well, that's proprietary information, so it can't find it. So again, it hasn't helped me any. So what do you think I do with technology? I don't.
Yeah, can I take that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think it's probably because you're trying, a very broad LLM for a very specific vertical use case. I think it's that trying to find more tailored things that are trained on your domain is probably the right way to think about it, because probably the Microsoft Copilot is great at generic things. Even if you do RAG and give it documents, you probably need a little bit more. I think what Aniket is doing, you're trying to do your own LLM for claims, you're still working on it. Why? Because I think you're thinking that it's way more purpose-built for you versus just a very broad tool, right?
Yeah.
Because you're trying to get narrow. That's what I think you probably need a more verticalized solution versus just a broad horizontal solution.
Yeah. And I totally see where you're coming from. My ChatGPT hallucinates all the time. Something I deal with all the time as well. And Arun brings a good point. I think the identifying the issue actually is the first step. And to Arun's point, being able to see that these Microsoft Copilot might not be the solution. I think that open-mindedness to explore new different things, and I'd love to talk to you afterwards, and I can tell you what I'm working on as well. But there are definitely frustrations when it comes to AI and technology, and I, as an engineer, run into those frustrations every day. Sometimes I talk to my ChatGPT every day. It's a little unhealthy, but there's times where I go a week and I'm kind of tired of talking to you. You're wrong. So there definitely are these frustrations, but I think the awareness that you are running into these issues and the open-mindedness to kind of explore ideas, something that may be more tailored, stuff like that is definitely a potential solution. And I would love to talk to you afterwards and we can discuss that as well. But no, it's a great point. I think you never know what the AI is going to do and how it's going to, I mean, for me, sometimes I'll talk to it and just like, yeah, I don't fully trust you, so I'm going to move on. But we have about a minute left, and I really appreciate everyone and all the questions and everyone kind of conversing with us. I hope coming out of this that you guys see that innovation is not a scary thing, something that you can slowly adopt. And I do want to leave the group, I think, with just one last thing is we're not investing in technology, we're investing in the future of healthcare. Technology, unfortunately, maybe fortunately for some, unfortunately for some of you, fortunately for some of us, is something that will drive growth and drive us and propel us into the future. So as we discuss, if you're more than welcome to talk to us after the panel and kind of get our insights as engineers, any frustrations or curiosities that you have, but very excited that we can talk to you about technology, because this is what we love to do, and this is what we sit down and do, and we're in the roots every day doing it. So I appreciate you all for sitting and listening and the questions that you had, and hopefully you guys start adopting technology or at least start thinking about it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Aniket, Arun, Hermione. Always good. Thank you for your minds.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.